Imagine the safest looking beach you can think of. The sky is clear, the ocean looks calm. Small waves have been gently reaching the shore for the last 20 minutes. A family is walking near the water. Someone stops to take a photo. Nothing looks dangerous. And that's exactly the problem. Because somewhere beyond the horizon, something may already be coming. Not a tsunami, not a storm, just one wave. A wave that can suddenly travel much farther up the beach than everything you've seen before it. It can knock an adult off their feet, pull someone into the ocean, and even move logs weighing hundreds of pounds. They're called sneaker waves, and the name tells you exactly what makes them so dangerous. They sneak up on you. Sometimes the ocean stays relatively quiet for 10, even 20 minutes before one arrives, long enough for you to decide the water isn't coming any closer, long enough to put your bag down, long enough to let the children play near the edge, long enough to stop watching the ocean. But how can one wave suddenly reach so much farther than all the others? And more importantly, would you recognize the danger before it reached you? So where does a sneaker wave actually come from? You might imagine a storm suddenly creating one enormous wave somewhere offshore. But the truth is stranger. Sometimes the ocean simply adds waves together. Far from the beach, different groups of waves can be traveling across the same ocean. Most of the time, they don't arrive in perfect step. For a while, they can partly cancel each other out. And at the beach, everything looks calm. Small wave. Another small wave. Nothing unusual, but that calm can be temporary. As those wave systems continue moving, their timing changes. And eventually, two wave systems can line up. Crest meets crest. Their energy combines. And suddenly, the water can reach much farther up the beach than the waves that came before it. Think of two people pushing a child on a swing. If they push at the wrong moments, not much happens. But if both pushes arrive at exactly the right moment, the swing goes much higher. The ocean can do something similar. Scientists call it constructive interference. But you don't need to remember the name. Remember this instead. A calm ocean doesn't necessarily mean the next wave will stop where the last one did. And that's what makes sneaker waves so deceptive. The dangerous part isn't always that the wave is enormous. It's that it can be much larger than everything you have just been watching. The National Weather Service specifically defines the hazard by this contrast with the preceding waves. And here's the disturbing part. We can forecast conditions when sneaker waves are more likely, but scientists still cannot tell you. The dangerous wave will hit this exact spot at 2:17 p.m. So if we can't predict the exact wave, is there anything on the beach that can warn us? There is. And one of the biggest clues is something most people would never consider dangerous: a long period of calm water. So what should you actually look for? Here's the strange part. The first warning may be nothing at all. The ocean looks calm. Small waves arrive one after another. 10 minutes pass, then 20. And that's when people begin moving closer to the water. But periods of small, seemingly harmless waves can come just before a sneaker wave. So here's rule number 1. Never judge the ocean by the last few waves. When you arrive at an unfamiliar beach, don't immediately choose the closest beautiful spot to the water. Watch first. The National Weather Service recommends observing the ocean for at least 20 minutes to understand its pattern. And look at the sand. See that darker, wet area much farther up the beach? The ocean has already been there. If the ground is wet, waves have recently reached it, even if the water now looks far away. Then there are the rocks. Perfect place for a photo. Perfect place to sit. And sometimes, a terrible place to be when an unexpected wave arrives. The same is true for jetties and the edge of steep beaches. Official warnings specifically tell beachgoers to stay away from these areas when sneaker wave conditions are present. And those enormous pieces of driftwood lying on the beach? They may look like benches. Don't treat them like benches. Some weigh hundreds of pounds. Yet a sneaker wave can lift and roll them. Suddenly, the danger isn't only the water. It's the tree trunk moving with it. But there is one rule easier to remember than all the others. Never turn your back on the ocean. Not for the perfect photograph. Not because the last 20 waves were small, and definitely not because somebody says, "It's fine, the water is miles away." Because a sneaker wave can run at least 150 feet, about 45 meters, onto dry beach. But suppose you've done everything right, and the water suddenly starts racing toward you anyway. Do you run? And what happens if it knocks you down? That's where the situation becomes much more dangerous. So what if you see the water coming? Move immediately. Don't wait to see how big the wave becomes. Don't stop for your shoes. And definitely don't go back for your phone. Move away from the ocean and toward higher ground. Because the first impact isn't always the most dangerous part. A sneaker wave can knock you down, but then the water has to return to the ocean, and it may try to take you with it. Water, sand, and gravel can fill your clothes. Survivors have described the weight as feeling almost like concrete, making it incredibly difficult to stand or escape. And on colder coasts, another clock starts immediately. Cold water. Sudden immersion can quickly affect your ability to move your arms and legs exactly when you need them most. But now imagine something even worse. You are safely on the beach, and somebody else has been swept into the water. Your instinct is obvious. Run in and help them, but that can turn one victim into two. NOAA's advice is clear: protect yourself first. Alert a lifeguard or emergency services and look for something that floats or something you can use to reach the person without entering the water yourself. It's difficult advice to follow when someone you love is in trouble, but the ocean doesn't become safer because you're trying to help. And that's why the best sneaker wave survival strategy begins before the wave ever arrives. Check the local surf and weather forecast. Stay farther from the water than feels necessary. Keep children close. Stay away from large driftwood. Always know where you could escape, and never, ever turn your back on the ocean. Because a sneaker wave doesn't need to be the biggest wave you've ever seen. It only needs to be the one you weren't expecting. But there's still one question. If these waves can happen on surf beaches around the world, why are some coastlines much more notorious for them than others? Sneaker waves can happen on many surf beaches, but some coastlines have earned a particularly dangerous reputation. Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and when you see these beaches, it's easy to understand why. Wild cliffs, dark sand, huge pieces of driftwood. Cold Pacific water, beautiful? Absolutely. Forgiving? Not always. The beaches here are often steeper than the broad sandy beaches farther south. That matters. Water can rush farther and more violently up a steep beach, and then race back toward the ocean. And the water is cold, very cold. If you're suddenly pulled in, cold water can quickly make swimming and even simple movement much harder. Then there are the logs. Those enormous tree trunks scattered along the shore may look as if they've been lying there forever, but some arrived there for a reason. The ocean put them there, and if the ocean moved them once, it can move them again. A sneaker wave can lift or roll a waterlogged log heavy enough to seriously injure or crush someone standing nearby. This danger is real enough that the National Weather Service issues specific beach hazard statements when conditions favor sneaker waves. In May 2026, for example, warnings were issued along parts of Northern California. The ocean could look almost calm. Then, after a long gap of smaller waves, a much larger set could suddenly arrive. And sometimes people discover the danger only when it's already moving toward them. In June 2026, a mother and daughter at Baker Beach in San Francisco were caught by a powerful, unexpected wave. The daughter was pulled into the water, her mother went after her and was also overwhelmed. Bystanders ultimately helped pull them to safety. They survived. But not every story ends that way. And that's perhaps the strangest thing about sneaker waves. There may be no dark clouds, no hurricane warning, no earthquake, no giant wall of water visible on the horizon. Just a beautiful beach and an ocean doing what oceans have done for millions of years, until one wave goes farther than all the others. So before we finish, there is one last question. If you remember only 5 things from this video, which 5 could actually save your life? So let's make this simple. You don't need to understand wave physics. You don't need to predict the ocean. You just need to remember 5 things. Number 1, when you arrive at the beach, watch the ocean first. Give it time. A few calm waves don't tell you what the next one will do. Number 2, look at the sand. If you see wet sand much farther up the beach, the ocean has already reached it, and it can reach it again. Number 3, stay away from large driftwood near the water. That enormous log may look completely harmless until several tons of water decide to move it. Number 4, keep children close. A wave that barely knocks an adult off balance can be much more dangerous for a child. And finally, number 5, the easiest rule of all. Never turn your back on the ocean. Not for a photograph, not because the weather is beautiful, not because the beach looks safe, and not because nothing has happened for the last 20 minutes. Because that's the strange thing about sneaker waves. They don't announce themselves with sirens. There may be no storm, no dramatic warning. Sometimes, the warning is simply that everything looks perfectly normal.